All right, here are the numbers. There we go. So if you only came here for the numbers and that's it, you can move along. That's fine. Now, obviously, that's not a huge heap of money, and I'm gonna break down how long I worked on the game and a couple of post-mortem things after this breakdown. Is this idea stolen from Game Dev Underground? Yes, but that's because I believe transparency is important. I really like what he did with his video, and it seems like more people want to see those physical numbers, and I don't mind sharing that stuff. Also, I wanted to share more data on a purely Steam-centric launch, because that is the main platform that I launched the subject on. And this isn't a dig at GDU at all, but it's also for the fact that the numbers at the beginning of his video are not entirely accurate, simply because he did do a physical special edition, and he said so in the video himself that he hadn't figured out the price point per unit yet to make the physical unit and ship it. So he's going to be left with a different number. And finally, I think most indie devs are interested in Steam numbers and launching on Steam, simply because that's the platform that everybody knows. It's large. It's the elephant in the room. There's itch.io and other places to launch, but I think most people, when they wonder about numbers for sales, usually have to do with Steam. So that's what I'm going to be sharing here for the subject. For those of you that don't know, my name is Brian Clark. I'm an indie developer, but I've been working in AAA for over a decade before I went into indie. My first title was The Subject. That's the solo project that I'm going to be talking about today, but I also was involved in co-development of Welcome to the Game 2, and I'm currently working on Welcome to the Game The Recruit. So check that out while I'm making that stuff with Reflect Studios on Twitch. Let's just get into it. So what we're going to be looking at here is the lifetime revenue of 4 months of sales for the subject. I wanted to wait a little bit because usually the mass amount of your money is made in your first month, and then it starts to trail off into pretty much nothingness. So I wanted to have more of those numbers so I can break them down piece by piece. So what we're looking at right now is the gross sales. So that's before everything. That's before Steam's cut. That's before all the chargebacks, which is another thing that I think is important to cover. So this is the starting number. So how does this break down and turn into dollars that you actually get? Well, obviously there's Steam's share, which is 30%. So they take that's gone right away. The other thing you got to worry about are chargebacks. These are people that have returned your game within the window that is allowed for them to get their money back. So if we take a look here, my total units returned was 93 units. That was 13.6%. That broke down to $631.70 being lost. Overall, that percentage of returns is not terrible. You can expect those things obviously everywhere. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, that's not too bad a number. Now we can break this thing down by month. The launch month was November. So the first month, I don't want to say the first month because it launched late November, so it was only $244.38. That's because it was at the tail end of the month. Next month was the bigger month, which pulled in $1,726.44. Then there's the return of your $100 purchase to get onto Steam. And you can see in January, I got about a third of that. Roughly. $484.80. Following month, it dropped about another $100, $360.28. So you can see it gradually declines. And that leaves me with a net profit after 4 months of $2,915.90. Now this seems kind of par for the course. I don't really have a litmus test for this sort of thing. Because again, I've only been in the indie space for a little bit, and Welcome to the Game 2 did very well, but that's through an established fan base and a lot of other different aspects. For me, being an unknown, brand new company, brand new game, brand new IP, like nobody knows who I am. This is the result of just pounding the pavement and trying to get things out wherever I can. So I'm going to break down the various things that I did to at least get the coverage that I had. It's kind of sad to say that this is more than a lot of indie devs get, because there's a lot of indie devs, there's a lot of games out there, varying qualities and all that sort of stuff. So sometimes you make more, you make less. That's how it's going to work. All right, so what did I do to even get noticed at all? First things first, the subject was a solo project. I did all the art, I did all the programming, every aspect of it I did, with the exception of like the voiceover work and the music and sound effects that were purchased, right? And it took 7 months for me to make. So 7 months of development time, 4 months, receive a $2,915.90 net return. That's pretty terrible when you break it down to like a paid per hour basis. But that's part of growing a product. That's part of growing your company. That's part of growing your presence. And like I said, I don't have a presence. I don't have a big community. This is just straight up work, getting people to try and notice the stuff that I'm doing. What did I actually do to try and get noticed? Well, I looked at YouTubers and Twitch streamers that showed the sort of products that were in the same vein as what I was making. I did this sort of survival, horror, sci-fi puzzle games. So I found people that did horror streaming. So early on, I started compiling a list of contact information for these people, just kind of keeping things in the range of certain metrics, like their follower numbers on different social media and things like that. Nothing too deep divey, just sort of surface information, and then I would watch a little bit of their videos and kind of get a feel for what they do, and maybe they'll be interested in it, that sort of thing. I also, again, I stream my development on Twitch, so I have a tiny community. It's not huge, but they are dedicated, and love them to death, by the way. And they helped kind of gather some more people and add them to this Google Sheet that had all this different contact information in it. Set that aside for later use. That's more for when you're launching, when you have a demo, that sort of stuff. So what I did in the interim while I was working on the game, I did weekly dev video updates and blog posts on my website, on IndieDB, and posted these things on social media wherever I could. It's basically, you're scraping the barrel for anything that you can. And the key at least for me, for getting any level of notice was metadata, where you're just putting new information out there all the time. As many sites, as many things are being updated with your name and your product as possible. And so I had, like I said, blog posts, I had links from blog posts to other posts, and my video posts linked to my other blog posts on IndieDB, where I had some stuff posted on Steam and like just basically trying to build that as much as possible. Now, what really sucks about that is you are taking up a ton of development time. It takes a lot of time to shoot footage of your game, shoot footage of yourself, do voiceover, write up posts and edit that stuff down and get it into something people will even care about watching or listening to or whatever. You're really it's kind of a machine gun approach where you're really just trying to do anything you can to get as much information out there. The other thing I tried to do was create press releases around sort of mini milestones for the game, where it was like, if I announced the game, I made a press release. If I put out the demo, I made a press release. When I went to DreamHack, I made a press release, and I'll provide the link below of where I submitted my press release. And those did get picked up by people. People did play the demo. There were people that contacted me. So there was a bit of networking that worked out there in my favor from doing that. So again, I'll put the link down there. But that's really what I did. It was just a lot of making posts, a lot of recording videos, and breaking down the work that I had done for the week, and just trying to get as much metadata out there as possible so it can pop up on search engines, it can pop up on people's sites for like related content, those sorts of things. And I started early. The moment I had stuff to show that wasn't just gray boxes, I started making posts about where the game was, updates that were coming, and to this day, they don't have tons of views on YouTube. I mean, look right now, I don't have any subscribers really, but I kept making that content, and that's to be able to post it other places and share those things wherever I can. Just try and build as much of a web as possible, and you do that. At least in my approach, I'm thinking, do this again, next game. Build contacts. People that saw your last game will know that you made a new game and go, oh, that game, okay, I'll try this one, and you just keep trying to climb up. That's my approach. That's the best I can do. So I'm gonna keep doing that. But that would be the main takeaway that I think was the most successful out of all of it, was really starting early on sharing information about my game. Now, that's not to say like, I've got a game idea, I'm gonna start making daily vlogs. Like, I think that's a terrible idea, because you're not doing anything for development. Then it's all a bunch of what if, and people aren't super interested in what if. A little bit, but not really. Okay, mini postmortem for the subject. The things that I feel like I could have done a little differently. It took me 7 months to make. I think time-wise I did really well. I time boxed out all the different aspects of the game, came up with a schedule, and really tried to stick to that. I think 7 months for the kind of game the subject was, and for the visuals that I went for, I think 7 months was pretty good. I think I could have done more with less. I ended up making this really big maze because when I was in proxy stage, and I was just placing everything with gray boxes, I wanted the maze to be confusing because I wanted people to get lost, and it was fine in a smaller scale. But the moment I started making the real art, it got really big, and the maze ended up being like 4 times the size, which seemed really cool at the time because I was like, oh great, now I have more places to work with. But it ended up being a lot of content to have to make to fill it, and I feel I didn't quite get to achieve that. I feel the game works as the game that it is. I think that's nice, but I could have made a smaller maze. I could have kind of focused a little more on the meat of things, and sort of made it a tighter gameplay loop. That being said, once you learn the maze and really take the time to kind of dissect it and know its layout, it's really easy to traverse and super fast to beat the game. So it's kind of a weird position where there could have been more thought into what the scale was becoming and how to use a smaller space a little bit more intelligently to achieve the same thing. So in the end, the game is what it is. I think it's successful. I still really like what it's turned into. But you know, you really, I think it's important to really pick apart what you do and find the failures in it. All right, that's enough. That's enough of all this stuff. I don't want this to drag out too long or anything. Short and long of it, I'm going to look down here and look at the numbers just to make sure I've got everything right. Gross sales after 4 months for the subject, $5,071.25. After all the costs, net profit, net sales were $2,915.90. Chargebacks were 93 units. That was 13.6% of all units sold, which means I was at a loss of $631.70 there. Again, chargeback and knowing the metrics behind what causes someone to return your game are very important. Postmortem side of things. Try to step back and take an aerial view of your project as often as you can. Really separate yourself from this thing that is your work. Social side, start posting about your game early, start posting often, just create metadata. When you're an unknown, trying to find as many avenues as possible to get your name out there is very important. And I am not what I would consider a successful indie dev, not yet. Welcome to the Game 2 was successful. but I think that was a strategic move on my part, partnering with Reflect Studios under an already established IP. And the subject did well for a first-time indie game, unknown, at least in my opinion. Try to find a streamlined way to post all of this content. One of the struggles that I had was just creating these things while also trying to make the game. So I would recommend just taking screenshots, quick videos, things like that, just while you're developing. Not really thinking about it too much, just doing it so that you have a folder full of these snapshots in time of your development, and then when you make a post, you can go back to that and say, oh, okay, I have things to show. Because like I said, that was one of the things that I felt I struggled with, where, you know, I was recapping something from a week and I wanted to show progress from the beginning of the week, but it was already done, and so I couldn't show that really. So just a thought, something to try and keep in mind when you're doing your development. So that's it. I think I've taken up enough of your time. I really hope that this information was helpful to you. Again, shout out to Game Dev Underground. If you don't know him, if you haven't checked out his channel, his work, you should. I saw his video and I really liked the idea of sharing the actual data, because a lot of times there's sort of this smoke screen that people throw in front of numbers because it's taboo. Thank you very much for watching. Do the usual YouTube stuff, simply because it's important to grow an audience, right? Be sure to check out the Twitch. I do stream Monday through Friday, 1 to 5 Central Time. I'm just doing my game development, modeling, texturing, coding, you name it. I'm doing it on there. We just hang out and have fun. Follow the Twitter, do the Instagram thing, all that sort of stuff. Keep on top of the things that I am doing, and also just share with me your thoughts about this stuff, and maybe connect if you're another developer and you're interested in this sort of thing. I love helping each other out. I really believe in tending to the garden you can touch. So if you reach out to me, I have no problem reaching back. Bye. See you next time. Thank you. Oh, and go download The Subject on Steam.